After about 10 minutes of walking in silence, I finally get sick of listening to myself think about how badly I messed up today, so I put in my earphones. As soon as I hear the familiar lyrics of Queen pumping through my ears, my mood begins to slightly improve. For some people, music is just a tune to have on in the background while they do something else, but for me, it is so much more. Whether I needed to get pumped up for a boxing match, or wanted help focusing on studying for a big test, or desperately needed a distraction from my current depressed mood, music always does the trick. There's just nothing better than shutting off my brain and listening to songs by Queen, Elton John, or Journey. With my music bumping in my ears, the rest of the walk to my apartment flies by, and before I know it, my apartment building is right in front of me. I know that I should probably head into my apartment to clean the dried blood off my bottom lip, but I feel like staying outside for a bit longer. So I walk over to the small park across from my apartment building and sit down in the shade of a large oak tree. As I try to enjoy the fresh air, I realize just how hot it is out today, and within minutes, I stink of sweat. At this point, I don't really care if anyone sees my beaten face, so I take off Jake's hoodie and shove it in my backpack. I take a look around the empty park and street, grateful that since it's the middle of the day, nobody is around to question why I'm not in school. With my back against the trunk of the tree, I close my eyes and allow myself to think of how I'm going to fix this mess. If I go back to school to meet with the guidance counselor, then Mr. Porter will be waiting there to suspend me. But if I skip the meeting, I'll have to wait in the apartment until my mom gets home, and then I'll be forced to tell her about all the fights I've been getting into. Even though she had told me this morning about how she will always be proud of me, I know that as soon as she hears about all the fights, not only will she be disappointed, the news might send her back into a fit of depression. Neither one of these options seems right, so I still have no clue what I'm going to do. Just as I'm about to shout with frustration over my current situation, my music suddenly cuts out and changes to static. I move to take my earphones out, but the static quickly fades away and a voice begins talking. Attention all staff and students of Montgomery High School and those who are currently within a kilometer of the building. You must evacuate the area immediately as there is a projectile heading straight for the school. We estimate that this projectile is capable of destroying the entire building, so those who are currently in or around the building must begin to evacuate, or else the impact will cause serious injury or death. Be advised, this is no joke. If you need proof that what I'm saying is true, then look up at the sky. As soon as the message is finished, there's another short blast of static before my music starts playing again. I slowly shut off my music and shove my earphones in my backpack, trying to process what I just heard. My eyes are glued to the sky as I walk away from the tree and try to find whatever projectile the message was talking about. I hold out my hand in front of my forehead, trying to block the sun as I keep looking and hope that this is all some sort of prank. It isn't. I finally see it. The projectile is so tiny that it almost looks like an airplane, but I know that's only because it's up so high, so there's no telling how big it truly is. As I study the projectile, I notice that it doesn't look like a missile or a drone or whatever else I was expecting it to look like. What it actually looks like is a meteor. A meteor that's going to crash into my school. The second that thought crosses my mind, I grab my backpack and take off running down the street as fast as I can. I have no clue if I'll be able to beat the meteor to the school, but I have to try. As I run, a few people that I pass are staring up at the sky watching the meteor, meaning that I wasn't the only person who heard the message. However, most of the people I see on my way back to the school walk around like everything is completely normal, which worries me because of what the guy said about the projectile causing a devastating impact. The thought makes me want to yell at everyone to move further away from the school, but I don't have the time, so I just keep running. After a few minutes of running, every breath I take comes out as a wheeze, and my legs feel like jelly. I stop at the end of a quiet street to catch my breath, and it hits me that there is no way I can do this. Even if I'm able to run at my top speed all the way there, the school is still a few minutes away, and the meteor might hit the building at any second. I'm not a good runner to begin with, but thanks to the beating I took from Mike, my side feels like someone had been pounding on it with a hammer. The logical part of my brain tells me that this is pointless. Someone at the school must have heard the message and everyone is probably already evacuating the building. It's pointless for me to keep running. Just as I'm about to give up, I think about all the good people who are in that building. My friends, who had lied to the principal for me, which probably guarantees them at least a week of detention. Tessa, who was always kind to everyone and had even tried to help me right up until I told her off. There are also tons of other decent and kind students and teachers in that building. So if there is even a fraction of a chance that nobody in the school heard that message, then I have to help them. Despite how pained and weary I feel, I take off running once again. This time, I'm fueled by the idea of saving everyone in the building, so I'm able to ignore all the pain I'm in and run even faster. Before I know it, the school comes into view and the sidewalk under my feet turns to the familiar cracked asphalt of the parking lot. Breathing even more heavily than before and drenched in sweat, I stop when I reach the edge of the school's parking lot. I pull out my phone and see that it only took me about 12 minutes to run from my apartment building all the way to the school. As I feel my chest swell with pride over how fast I ran that distance, I finally notice that nobody is evacuating the building. That pride instantly turns to full-blown panic as I take off sprinting towards the front door. I throw open the doors of the school and quickly rush into the building. I look around the empty lobby for any sign that people inside the school know about the incoming meteor. The lobby is as quiet as usual, so I glance inside a few nearby classrooms with open doors, but it seems like everyone is acting like things are completely normal, which terrifies me. My first priority is coming up with the best way to warn everyone. I pause for a second to figure out how I can do this. First, I consider just running through the school screaming that there's a meteor heading right for the building, but I realize how crazy I would sound. So I figured that the best option is to go into the office and get Mr. Porter to tell everyone over the intercom. I jog down the hall and quickly enter the front office. My sudden entrance startles the secretary, who makes a very high-pitched gasping noise. She looks up at me as I walk towards Mr. Porter's office.
"My lord, Mr. Davis!"
she tells me, looking very annoyed.
"You scared me half to death."
I don't have time to explain to her what's going on. So instead of talking to her, I just rush past her and head into Mr. Porter's office.
"Excuse me, but you know that nobody's allowed inside Mr. Porter's office unless they are told otherwise."
I ignore her and enter the office anyway. Inside, I find Mr. Porter hunched over his desk, working on his computer. He looks up at me with a mixture of surprise and anger. "Mr. Davis, I've been looking for you all day." His office seems strangely dark considering it's only the middle of the afternoon. The only sources of light in the room come from the open door behind me and a small lamp on Mr. Porter's desk. It doesn't take me long to realize that the reason the room is so dark is because Mr. Porter has all the blinds pulled down. As I try to respond to his comment and explain to him what's going on, all I can manage to get out is a loud wheeze as I'm still trying to catch my breath from my run to the school. Before I have a chance to recover enough to say anything, Mr. Porter shakes his head at me. "From the looks of you, Mr. Davis, it's clear that Mr. Wilson was telling the truth about you starting a fight with him at lunch." He sounds like he's disappointed in me, but I can hear a hint of triumph in his voice, as if he's happy that this had happened. "You know what our deal was, Mr. Davis," he tells me. "Since you got into another fight, you're suspended from this school until further notice." "Meteor." I finally wheeze out between my raspy breaths and coughing. Mr. Porter's face turns bright red. "Is that some sort of joke about what that imposter told me yesterday?" I have no idea what he's talking about, but there's no time to ask him to explain. Instead of saying anything else, I walk over to Mr. Porter's window and grab the cord to open his blinds. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Mr. Porter asks me. He stands up and looks like he's about to stop me, but I open the blinds before he can do anything. "Just look," I say, pointing to the sky outside. "There's a goddamn meteor heading right for the school." Sure enough, there it is. I had been expecting it to still look super tiny and far away, but my heart jumps into my throat when I see that it is now close enough to clearly make out what it looks like. The meteor is a dark gray, almost black color, and whatever rock that it is made up of looks all rough and bumpy. However, the thing about the meteor that immediately catches my eye is that it has a strange yellow-colored glow surrounding it, instead of the typical ring of fire that you would expect a meteor to have. But honestly, it doesn't matter all that much what colors are surrounding the meteor that is heading towards us. What matters is that there is a meteor heading towards us. Oh my god, it's true. I look over to see Mr. Porter staring out the window with his mouth open and his eyes glued to the meteor. I have never seen him at such a loss for words. Just as I'm about to tell him to make an announcement over the intercom and get everyone out of the school, he speaks first. "Mary, get in here," he yells without taking his eyes off the meteor. The secretary hurries into the office, still looking annoyed that I had ignored her and just walked in here uninvited.
"What is it, sir?"
she asks Mr. Porter. Mr. Porter doesn't look away from the window. He just points at the meteor and Mary the secretary gasps.
"Oh, dear Lord. The phone call was real,"
she says. I finally speak up. "What phone call?" Mr. Porter manages to take his eyes off the meteor and looks at me. His face is as white as chalk and his hands are shaking. "About 20 minutes ago, every phone in the school went off at the exact same time." He says, I answered the call from my office phone, but all I heard on the other end was static for a few seconds, and then a man's voice came on and talked a bunch of nonsense about a meteor that's going to hit the school and how everyone has to evacuate. I hung up the phone before the message even finished playing and walked out to the front office to see that Mary had received the exact same call on her phone. We assumed that this had to be some sort of prank, so we quickly emailed all the teachers and told them that if they or any of their students received the message, they should ignore it. The same message came over my earphones when I was listening to music. I tell them, there's no way that we can evacuate everyone out of the school before that meteor hits. If I had just listened to that message, then we would have had time to get everyone to safety. Instead, I killed everyone in the building. Never in a million years would I have thought that I'd be comforting the school principal. Yet, I find myself walking over to Mr. Porter and putting a hand on his shoulder. Listen, sir, I say as he looks up at me with teary eyes. Nobody in their right mind would have believed that message, so it's not your fault that you didn't evacuate the school. But there's still time to act now. We have to get everyone away from the building before the meteor hits. Mr. Porter sits up a bit straighter and tries to look more confident. While I was talking to him, the secretary just stood there in disbelief that the student who frequently gets called down to the office for getting into fights was giving the school principal a pep talk. Okay, Mr. Porter says, what do you suggest we do? Fortunately, I had already figured out the fastest way to get everyone out of the school while I was running across the parking lot. I turned to the secretary. Mary, call every bus driver that you can get a hold of and tell them to get here as quickly as possible. Make sure to get them to park somewhere where they can drive away in a hurry as soon as their buses are full. Mary hesitates for a second, obviously not used to taking orders from a student. But when she remembers the seriousness of the situation, she quickly nods and hurries off to her desk to make the calls. I then turn to Mr. Porter, who seems like he regained his composure and is now ready for action. Sir, I'm going to need you to go on the intercom and tell everyone to evacuate the school. Don't tell them about the meteor though, because they'll just end up panicking. He makes a move to head over to the intercom system, but abruptly stops. The intercom's broken. We're getting a guy to come in to fix it at the end of the week. Crap, I say as I remember hearing about that. What should we do? I think for a second and then it hits me. Alright, I have a backup plan. Do you still have that megaphone that you sometimes use at assemblies? I ask, already knowing the answer. He nods and then reaches into his bottom desk drawer and pulls it out. Okay, great, I say, feeling somewhat confident that we can pull this off. You stand in the lobby and yell into that thing to get people to evacuate the school. I'll go around to each classroom and make sure that everyone's getting the message. Mr. Porter nods at me with newfound determination. Now back to looking like the overconfident man that had just yelled at me in this very office not 24 hours earlier. The two of us rush out of his office door, but Mary stops us as we make our way out of the front office.
I called all the bus drivers and told them there's a chemical hazard in the school. The first of them should be arriving in the next few minutes to evacuate the students. Do you need me to do anything else?
She asks me. Actually, yes, I respond. I need you to go outside and gather a few teachers when people start evacuating. Then I need all of you to take attendance of every person who comes out of the school. We're going to need to know if anyone gets left inside. She turns a bit pale.
You want us to count every person as they come out of the school all at once?
Every single one, I respond. She nods, trying not to look too disheartened at the near impossible task I just assigned her. Together, the three of us quickly jog out of the office and into the lobby. Mary immediately heads for the front door to get ready for the surge of people about to join her outside the school, while Mr. Porter stands in the center of the lobby. He turns on the megaphone and begins yelling into it for people to evacuate the school. I almost forgot how loud Mr. Porter is when he yells into that thing, and the sudden noise nearly deafens me. I just hope that it's loud enough for everyone on all 3 floors of the school to hear him. While Mr. Porter yells into his megaphone, I run downstairs to the first floor of the school and begin banging on doors and screaming into each classroom for people to evacuate the school. It isn't until I finish banging on the last door at the end of the hallway that I finally hear people getting out of their seats and making their way out of their classrooms. I jog through the forming crowd of people and quickly head back up to the main floor. The lobby is already a mess of confused students and teachers all walking towards the exits. Some people stop to question Mr. Porter, who just ignores them and continues to yell into his megaphone for people to leave the school. As I run through the lobby, I watch as the few people who are questioning him eventually take the hint and follow everyone else out of the school. It seems that everyone who was in one of the classrooms on the main floor of the school is already making their way to the exits. seconds. However, just to be safe, I push my way through the sea of students and teachers, most of whom look at me like I'm an idiot for going the wrong way, to check on the classrooms on the far side of the main floor. As I'm just about finished making sure that every classroom in one of the back hallways of the main floor is empty, a hand reaches out and grabs my arm. Josh, what the hell is going on? I turn to see Jake, Ty, and Luke standing there looking as confused as everyone else. I don't have time to stop and explain everything, so I motion for them to follow me. The four of us jog through an adjacent hallway that's full of more students and teachers heading towards the lobby. As soon as we make it past the crowd and I can finally hear myself think, I slow down and look back at them. There's a meteor heading right for the school, and if we don't get everyone out of the building as quickly as possible, then they could be killed by the impact. They all stare at me in disbelief. If that's a joke, then it's really not funny, Luke says, looking like he doesn't believe me in the slightest. We reach the end of the hallway, where there's a large window showing the west side of the school's parking lot and a nearby road. I know that the only way my friends will believe me about the meteor is if they see it for themselves. I point out the window and say, "Take a look for yourselves." They all peer out the window and their eyes immediately go wide with fear. I turn around to take a look myself, and when I see the meteor, I feel myself begin to panic because it's almost here. I figure that we maybe have a few minutes to finish getting everyone out of the school before it hits. It takes some effort, but I manage to pry my eyes away from the incoming meteor and look at the nearby road. My panic fades slightly as I see a few buses driving towards the school, but I also notice what looks like an army jeep heading in the same direction as the buses. I had assumed that emergency service vehicles might be making their way here if someone called 911 about what's going on, but I have no idea why the military would be here. However, I don't have time to give it much thought. As I turn away from the window, I begin to feel defeated by how close the meteor is to the school. There's no way I'll be able to check every remaining classroom before the meteor hits. However, as my friends all look at me, clearly even more terrified than I am, I realize that I have 3 more people who can help me. Jake, Luke, I say, I need you guys to quickly check every classroom left on this floor until you reach the side door. If you find anyone, get them to follow you out to the parking lot where everybody else is. Even if you don't find anyone, go there anyway, okay? The 2 of them try to hide their fear behind brave faces. They both nod at me, and as they take off running down the hall, I turn to Ty. I need you to go to the lobby and make sure that everyone who is there, including Mr. Porter, heads out to the parking lot now. Okay, but what about you? He asks me. I'm going to quickly check the 3rd floor for anyone who might still be up there, and then I'll join you guys outside. He shakes his head in disagreement. No way, man. If that meteor hits the school and you're still up there, then you'll be crushed for sure. There's no time for a debate, but I know that Ty will chase after me unless I convince him otherwise. Look, Ty, I won't be able to live with myself if that meteor kills someone on the top floor and I had the chance to prevent it. So I have to make sure that everyone has evacuated the 3rd floor. And while I do that, please make sure that everybody leaves the lobby. From the look on Ty's face, he understands that I am going to go up there no matter what. So instead of wasting more time arguing with me, he nods. Please be quick about it. I'll see you outside, he says before sprinting towards the lobby. As soon as he leaves, I turn and run towards the stairs as fast as I can. I sprint up the stairs 3 steps at a time while somehow not tripping. And for a guy with legs as short as mine, that's probably the most unbelievable thing about today. When I get to the top floor, I can see that all the classrooms closest to the stairs are empty, which is a good sign, but I still have to check the rest. Knowing how little time I have before the meteor hits the school, I run through the halls and glance inside every classroom. Just as I think that the entire floor is abandoned and I'm risking my life by being up here for nothing, I spot a closed door at the very end of a long hallway. I run over to the door and try to open it, but find that it's locked. I bang on the door with my fist for a few seconds, and just as I'm about to leave because I figure that the room is empty, a very angry teacher opens the door. "Young man, do you mind not banging on my door? My students are trying to write a test in here," he says. I stand there in shock that this teacher is so oblivious to what is happening. As I try to regain my composure, I look past him into the classroom, and sure enough, a room full of students are all looking up at me from their tests. How nobody in this room heard Mr. Porter's yelling or the chorus of pounding footsteps from everyone else leaving the building is beyond me. And I don't know how you got so badly beaten, but I suggest that you go to the nurse's office and get her to take a look at you. He begins to close the door on me when I finally recover from my surprise. I stick my foot in the doorway so the door won't close for him, and when he looks down at me to say something, I cut him off. I have no idea how you guys guys didn't hear all the noise, but everyone has evacuated the school because there's a meteor heading straight for us. You and your class have to leave now. The teacher looks at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief, as if he's trying to figure out if I'm joking or not. There's definitely not enough time for him to make up his mind, so I grab the teacher by the collar of his shirt and pull him into the hallway. Before the teacher has a chance to react to the fact that a student just put his hands on him, I run into the class and start yelling at the students to get up and leave the school. With my face still covered in cuts and bruises from the fight with Mike and the sheer panic in my voice, I probably come across as a lunatic because it doesn't take the students long to get moving. After everyone has left the room and is running towards the stairs, I start to follow them. However, when I get to the top of the stairs, a thought hits me like a rock. Tessa, I say out loud. Without even considering how little time there is until the meteor hits, I turn and run towards my French classroom as fast as my legs can carry me. I remember that Tessa will be in the computer room this period working on our French project that I should have been helping her with. The computer room is windowless, and if the door was shut, she might not have noticed what was going on outside the room. There's a very high chance that Tessa already left the school, but I have to be sure. The odds of me making it to the computer room, getting Tessa, and leaving the school with her before the meteor hits are insanely low, but I know that I have to try. As I pass by my French classroom, I see that the door is opened, so I take a brief look inside. Thankfully, I can see that the room is empty, but the thing that catches my eye isn't the classroom. As I look out the classroom window, my heart feels like it's trying to jump out of my chest, because the meteor is flying past the school soccer field and is seconds away from hitting not just the school, but this very classroom. I sprint next door to the computer room and throw open its closed door. Inside the room, Tessa is hunched down behind a computer screen, but she quickly stands up when she sees me.
Josh?
She says with a surprised look on her face.
I thought you went home.
I can't explain to her what's going on because I only have seconds to get her out of this room before the meteor hits. We need to get out of here now, I yell. She looks at me with a puzzled expression, and just as she's about to respond, I hear screams in the distance and immediately know what they mean. As Tessa moves towards me in a panic, realizing that something is seriously wrong, I run to her. I manage to make it to her and can see the fear and confusion in her eyes. Using every ounce of strength I possess in my skinny frame, I push her as far away from me as possible. She falls into the corner of the room right beside the open door. Her face is the last thing I see before the meteor crashes through the outside wall of the computer room. The giant rock lands right on top of me with such force that it instantly smashes through the floor and lands on the main level of the school. For some reason, I don't lose consciousness until the meteor has stopped moving. Right before I black out, I remember feeling like every bone in my body has been crushed. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this chapter, then please remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel. New episodes of Strength drop on Tuesdays and Fridays, but if you'd like to see the chapters early and support the channel for only $5 a month, then head on over to my Patreon page. Link is in the description. Also, you can purchase the full paperback novel on my website if you're in Canada, or on Amazon if you live outside of Canada. Thanks again, and I'll be back in a few days with the next episode.